full hat, all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
And take it away, we will. Welcome to
Shiny Side Out with Dave
and Mecky on WCCR, coming to you from Australia. That's the real place for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. It's home to fresh, unadulterated ideas and conversations in the chat room, and a place to get your merch if you're so inclined. This is show number 581. 180 and 500. You can catch us on air, on the line, and on your smarting device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio machine. If you missed Solaris' show, that's okay, because today Solaris, for the second week running, has been on a break. Well-deserved, in my opinion. And they had a really great, video or bit on AI. So if you missed that, I don't know, that should be in the archives, I guess. But, can't hurt to check anyway.
Yeah,
but
it should be recorded and be in the archives, yeah.
Yeah, it should be. So, you didn't miss her. She should be back next week, but you missed a pretty good AI presentation, I want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, the archives are free. So just go out there and check out her shows. And check out that AI show we just had. Got a few things to say about that. And of course, our shows are out there and everybody else's shows. So it's all free. Importantly, though, this is listener-funded radio. What that means is you are helping us fund. Well, you are funding the station, keeping those electrons bouncing from cloud to cloud, and keeping the airwaves alive with the chatter of Revolution Radio. If you can't afford to donate any currency, including crypto is all good, tell your friends and family about the station, about this show, about the other shows. Don't really care as long as you tell someone about something, and maybe one of those folk can donate. That's all goodness. Before we start broadcasting at you in anger, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For Dave,
the Dark and John.
Thank you, sir. And for myself, the Dark People. And it's really rainy here in Pamela Way today.
Is it?
And with that, it's very. And we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. Thank you very much. In fact, it is so rainy. Last night, my kids woke up. That's how rainy it was.
Oh.
It was pelting. It was pelting.
Pelting?
Pelting, indeed. Yes, sir. A lot. Again, that's what it is. It's a bit cooler as well. Yesterday was quite warm. And Friday was hot. 28 degrees. Hot. But I tell you what, before we get anywhere else, I just want to say one thing here. There are massive exploding craters near the Arctic Circle in Russia, in Siberia, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw a brief scientific advisory on it. There's a lady studying it now. She couldn't believe it at first. Now they have to, because it's happening. They don't know why it is happening. What they do know is it seems to happen in the soft layers between permafrost.
Yes.
It seems there may be a build-up
methane.
Yeah, that's correct. Methane gas. It still escapes from the crater once it's there, but they don't know why any of this is happening and why only there, because it's not the only area of permafrost on the planet, but it's happening there specifically. So they don't know. It's a fairly violent explosion, and these craters are tens of meters in diameter, and
they look like cenotes.
Well, they do. It's an unusual phenomenon. Now, the reason I'm mentioning it is because on the Shiny Side Out here, we've been saying this from the beginning. We don't know enough to feed all the data, all the information into models that would then correctly project what might happen as far as climate change is concerned, or anything really. But let's just focus on climate change here for a second. We don't have enough data. We don't have enough information. We don't know what we don't know. And some of the things we know, we don't know why they're happening, like this one thing here, for example. And people are talking about, climate change, let's do what we can to stop it. Let's reverse the temperature rises and all of that wonderful stuff. I want to say here once again, and this is important, that ship has sailed.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing we can do about that. It's done. Okay, and things will actually pick up speed. Like we've said from the start, we've been saying this for over 10 years.
Yep.
This will pick up speed. It will get worse very, very quickly. And when it gets really bad, when the tipping point is reached, it will go bad very fast. Things will go sideways like you won't believe it. And now they found that the oceans are increasing in temperature at an unprecedented rate, significantly unprecedented rate. And again, no one knows why. So we don't know why that happens, and we don't know why these explosions are happening. These are fairly significant events. So let's leave the ocean for a while. I mean, the ocean is big. It's a massive heat sink. It is. It just is huge.
Yep.
But it's heating up. That's unusual, very unusual. The second thing, though, this is really important to understand. This is not tectonic activity. This is not volcanic activity, which we are very familiar with. This is escaping gas that causes these massive craters in the permafrost, specifically in Siberia near the Arctic Circle. And we don't know why that happens, but these are massive. As far as geological events are concerned, this is extremely unusual. We don't know the process behind it. We don't fully understand the science behind it. So scientists are still going in, they're taking measurements, trying to figure out what it is, but we simply do not know. So what are the things, is my question here. Are we not aware of, can we look forward to what's happening to us? I don't know. I will tell you one thing, though, for the Southern Hemisphere, there's a high chance that this coming summer is going to be a catastrophic fire season. Why? We had 3 La Nina seasons, let's call it that, over 3 years, meaning increased precipitation, so quite wet, and it was, when we had flooding like there was no tomorrow here in Australia and elsewhere in the world, but flooding was quite something. So it was very wet, and things really grew a lot. Okay, so the underbrush, the trees, etc. So there's a lot of material that grew, organic material. Now, if you come off that cycle and you go into an El Nino season, which we are supposed to be going into now, that means that things are going to get very, very hot and very, very, very dry. Now, all of that stuff that grew in those preceding 3 years, and all over the world, not just in Australia, that's going to be tinder, and there's going to be a lot of it. And backburning has to be done, in a serious fashion. We have to manage our forests quite closely. But I don't think we have the resources to do it properly. But nonetheless, so just a word of warning: have your fire plans ready, please. Make sure that your escape routes, if you're in such an area, are there. The roads are passable. I mean, there's a lot of damage that Australia has taken in the floods, right? And the roads, especially back roads and so forth. So just make sure it's all in good repair. You can actually use them to get out if you have to. Lay in stocks if escape is no longer possible. And I know it's April going into May, but this ticks around quick. And before you know it, will be November, December, and then it'll get really hot and fiery. So just as I consider this a public safety warning, okay? Because it could be quite catastrophic. Anyway, what do you take, or what do you make of these Siberian things and the warming and all that?
Well, that's a hint that there is permafrost heating up. There's no other description for it. It could be geological heat from below, because we're watching the Iceland volcanoes going off. There's a lot more activity. Maybe it's part of that. I'm only saying maybe because I don't know. But they're knowing what I'm watching as far as Icelandic, not volcanism, but activity. Look, it's quite possible. I know Siberia there's no quakes or anything anywhere near it. There's no active volcanoes right now. So, maybe it's just magma coming up, but beneath, and there's nothing active that we can see, but quite possibly, right? The plate is huge and it doesn't have an edge around the top of Russia. So, that's what my take is. For as far as climate change, Yeah, the warmer the ocean, the more severe the hurricanes, cyclones, or what's the other, typhoons are. They're all the same thing. They're just in different places of the world because that local community has a different name for it. And we're going to see some increases in that, in severity and number and quantity. That's really, really important. And yes, Becky's right about, once it starts getting hotter, then things evaporate quicker. So if we saw a 2 meter at 2 meter sea level rise, we would see parts of the world inundated, right? No doubt. But we'd also see warmer, shallow waters that would then evaporate and cause more rain at the same time. The irony, right? It's drier because it's hotter in places where there isn't enough water to have a cold layer. And now we learned this in the dams, right, Mecky, in New South Wales when we had our drought. That the deep dams took a lot longer to evaporate to nothing than the shallow dams, because shallow water, all of it heats up to the bottom, whereas deeper water has multiple layers, temperature layers through it. So look, it is a thing. I think as long as you keep your sensible hat on and don't run to deny everything immediately, do weigh up all the information and make a valued call. Now, I know that Mecky and we can talk to until I suppose we're blue in the face to a person who denies there's climate change because they go, oh, it always gets hot in summer. Yes, it does. It always gets cold in winter, Mecky.
No. What?
Yes, I know, right? Well, yes, they're true. They're true facts, but
I dispute that.
You dispute it.
I dispute.
All right, it's always storms.
Sorry.
Right?
Yes.
Well, the number and the severity of the storms is going up. The temperatures continue to break records, and like I've said this on our show for 11 years, that if you have exactly the same amount of heat in our closed environment, and that's from the sun, for instance, there shouldn't be a way of being able to have more heat in the system unless something's different. Yes, methane is a terrible gas. It's actually worse than carbon dioxide as far as a heat blanket is concerned. The less reflective surfaces, all the white areas, I don't mean racially white, I mean snow covers. As they diminish, there is more stored energy. So that's really interesting. It becomes a runaway effect. And I don't mean like it's going to get 1 million degrees on the planet Earth, right? That's silly. But there are only a certain amount of kilojoules per square meter. And when the sun's directly above you, it's the most concentrated amount of kilojoules per square meter. But as the season, lucky we have seasons, the sun moves, and so the angle of the sun for the same amount of kilojoules is actually spread over a larger area. Therefore, you're reducing the amount of energy per square meter. It's just physics. If you want to argue with me, go study physics and then come back and have a conversation with me. So that's really interesting that, you can talk to someone, but if they deny it, you know what? I don't know Mickey does the same thing. We don't try to talk to people anymore about it outside of our show. There's very few people that want to actually know. You know that surface gloss on paint? That's the depth at which people are willing to attempt to understand what's truly going on. And they don't want to go down into the colour. The clear coat is all there. That's the depth they want. They go, so do tell me, Dave. You're into that conspiracy stuff. What about JFK? What about the moon? That's what they know. What about Marilyn? Yeah, okay, sure. I'll tell you what is current not what I think, what's the current perspective. And I can even tell you what the anti of those are, because Mickey and I are well read in all of these really deep dives. That's very important, that you don't just acquire inherited opinion. But anyway, moving on. There's a lot of talk, Mickey, about it's just going to take it to space. SpaceX and its huge Starship, and they call Stage 0, which is the platform at which the rocket rests and takes off from. That's the first stage to separate. That's called Stage 0. And they didn't get the cooling plates in time installed. They still got permission to run. And so when they lifted off, it ate a crater beneath, and then some of the debris damaged some of the rockets, they think. It also sent some debris a mile away, which is really extraordinary. 500-meter splashdowns were visible on the drone camera during the liftoff. So it is monumental. I'm not going to dismiss it. Monumental that we've never sent a rocket with that much thrust off planet Earth ever. So it's history making right there. The rest of the disaster could have been caused by one of the events on the way up, where the steering vane hydraulic system was punctured by some of the debris. There was a excess fuel leak from one of the pipes that also had some debris hit. Then we got main engine cut off and SEP, but then we didn't get SECO, which is the second stage engine cut off and separation, and they sent the what was still the command ship at the front and the second stage engine. They sent a command for that to terminate itself. But if you don't know, it's not packed with C4, which would be great. That'd be a grand explosion. No, but what it is they basically send puncture devices into the oxygen and the methane tanks in order for that to then combust. So that's what we saw. We did see a lot of internal venting going on. It would have been tremendous to see the command stage blast away, right? Let's just unlock it, guys, and let's just hit the thrusters, right, and get out of here. But no, they couldn't, because the thrust from the second stage would have held it against it anyway, against the command module. So, look, saying that, I've gone into, you can probably tell, I've watched the breakdown, I've watched many breakdowns, I've watched the experts, and I've listened to all the people who are knowledgeable in this. This is not my impression, it's just a relay of info. And it's something else, I tell you. Like, you've got to recognise just how tremendous that all is. So, look, happy with where the SpaceX thing is, Mickey. It still raises questions for me. Why the rush? Why on earth are we rushing into the moon, then Mars? And when you hear all the old clips from Elon Musk, it does sound like he's attempting not to say, impact or meteor or something like that, but rather, world war. Well, we're actually closer to a world war right now, than we were when he started and signed the project off to commence, when the project kickoff happened. So, wow, I mean, I don't think you can beat that to a world war. I think they might be taking off, while missiles are going. Who knows, right? That would end the program real quick if we didn't get to launching during peacetime. So there probably is still a hard date. Like, I don't think it's 2029. I believe it would be 2036, if it's going to be anything. And if you know what those dates are, then you're ahead of the most. So look, if that's what it was, fine. Because when asked, why would you even bother going to Mars, right? If you can just go to the moon and set up, Moon Base Alpha, for instance, from Space 1999, you could do that. Yeah. And he goes, it's not far enough away. There's no weapon on Earth that can get to the moon. Say, wouldn't you be safe if it was World War? Yeah, that to me is the extraordinary part, Mickey.
The thing is this: Moon and Mars. Okay, so if you're talking about permanent human habitation,
yes,
in a spatial body, it is a lot easier to survive on Mars with a colony than it is on the Moon. Number one, Mars has an atmosphere, however thin, there is an atmosphere. It also, as a planetary body, it is much larger, and there probably are much larger and more easily accessible water reserves on Mars. It probably has, and I'm pretty sure, in fact, that it does. It has, even if dormant, microbial life forms, and if it does, it would prove hospitable to anything we might want to introduce.
Possibly hospitable. Remember that if we'd never originated from Mars, then we're going into a world that has a microbial life that we've never encountered.
See, I think in the solar system, that's virtually impossible
because of panspermia.
Well, there's that. I mean, there's constant impacts of meteorites on our planets, and there's constant expulsion of material into the space from our surface of the planet, etc. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'd be astounded if it wasn't hospitable to plants. If you wanted to terraform a place, I'm not saying that you can in the near future. It'd be Mars. The Moon, as far as we know, at least, or what we've been told, it doesn't have an atmosphere. Now, having said that, you're forgetting the shiny or the tinfoil hat aspect of this entire conversation, which is, of course, we weren't allowed to go to the Moon in the last 50 years for whatever reason, or we decided not to go to the Moon. And I've now consumed probably, I don't know, I don't want to say all, but a fairly significant amount of documentaries, documentation, interviews with actual astronauts before they passed on around the Moon mysteries. It is, in my mind at least, very clear that a lot of the astronauts saw things they didn't expect, or if they expected them, they found hard to classify in their own mind, to deal with, and they were certainly told not to repeat to anyone. So I think there are a lot of stuff out there that we weren't told, full stop. It's just, and people say, oh, well, but you could never keep it a secret. Well, it isn't, because some of the stuff has leaked. That's the point.
That's right.
It's just being denied, right? I mean, it's not like the governments and all the agencies that are involved here would come forward and say, yeah, this is what it is. No, not at all. Now, so that's one aspect. The Moon actually is already someone's. It's already someone's. Mars, again, tinfoil hats on, everybody. Mars, in my opinion, was ours. It may still be ours. We may still have someone there, right? But we have to understand, and this is really interesting, because I watched a couple of documentaries now recently. I'll tell you what they're called. I don't want to lie to you, so I want to give you the right name. I've got it here. Here we go. No, that's not it. Here we go. That's it. Okay, one is called Not the Wrong Way. No, Not the Wrong Way North. That's not it. Here we go. I'll just expand the circle. Okay, here we go. I expanded it. Okay, one is called Secret Space, UFOs Apollo 1 to 11. That's documentary, really interesting. I recommend it if you. And the other one is called Accidental Truth, UFO Revelations, and they're both made this year. So in Accidental Truth, they talk about the in general the space program and also the programs that were put into place, especially by the American government, to study the UFO or UAP phenomenon. They're talking to senior members of the Bigelow staff. They're talking to the gentleman who used to run ATIP for the Pentagon, and has now since gone public with some of his stuff. Still can't disclose everything. Skinwalker Ranch. It turns out that the chief scientist there that engaged was also the chief scientist for the Pentagon when it came to investigating these UFO phenomena, which is something that he now came clean with on the show in the first couple of episodes to his fellow teammates that weren't aware of it. But he was sworn to secrecy. So people that are sworn to secrecy, they usually tend to keep it because, I mean, the consequences are significant, as you can see now.
They can be fatal. Yeah,
fatal, completely. Now, having said all of that, as I watched Accidental Truth, and Accidental Truth refers to the fact that sometimes people let things slip. You talk to someone, and Freudian slips happen, or things when you keep talking, and the stream of consciousness takes you a place, and you just keep talking, not realizing, or maybe realizing too late, just what you were saying and how much you were saying, right?
Yeah.
And you think, oh, maybe I said too much. And this is really something that struck me when I finished watching it. So now, bear in mind, these are people that have government clearance, the highest clearance, the highest access. They have government funding, so there's millions or tens of millions or maybe more money involved here. And they're saying exactly the same thing that we've been saying on the show for many, many years, including, but not only, but including, that these others, let's call them others, because we don't know if they're extraterrestrial or interterrestrial or interdimensional, we don't know, but the others, let's say, have been here for a very long time indeed.
That's right.
They may be interdimensional, they may be extra-temporal, they may be living in the earth and under the oceans as a parallel civilization. Now, I disagree with that statement. It's not a parallel civilization. It is a civilization that's so far ahead of us that's not even funny, but it seems stagnant. It seems, even though in this scenario, probably the time travel alternative might be the better explanation, but it seems a stagnant civilization. Why do I say it's stagnant? Because,
can I guess?
Over the last few thousand years, Dave, it hasn't changed.
That's
the
right.
tech doesn't seem to have changed.
Maybe there isn't any further tech you can do. Maybe that is the limit.
Well, I want to say no to that.
No. My point, not the the anthropomorphic view that Michio Kaku has about the description of level 1s to 5 of what a civilization can be, because maybe you just never get to the being able to use the power of the universe, right? Maybe that's preposterous, but certainly I like what you're saying. There hasn't been very much variation in what we've seen over the last 50, even 100 years, Meki. Before we had flight, we had a UFO crash, right? Even before humans had flight.
In fact,
and they got buried in an American town.
Yeah, the Wild West, cowboys and aliens, as it were. Yeah, that is correct.
That's where the movie came. The movie came out of Hollywood Eye's version of that, right?
Yeah, it was inspired by that. But look,
from your point, that there isn't any significant increase or change in the technology. So it looks like is that what they brought with them? Can they make any more? Maybe not. Maybe it's a bit District 9.
It doesn't seem that way. Now, having said that, there are a number of explanatory factors here. So number one, of course, is the time travel hypothesis. They all come from the same place in the same time. But they appear in our time at different times, as it were. Right? So they all come from the year. I'm making this up. They come from the year 50,000. That's what they have.
Yeah.
But they come from the year 50,000. But they're going to every time period in between, and therefore it seems the same. That's one. I'm not saying that's it, but okay, I dig it. Two, it's a civilization of beings that have achieved near immortality. I mean, when I say near immortality, I mean so close to immortality, it doesn't really make a difference. They're very long-lived. Now, in a long-lived, and this is when you're talking about galactic or even intergalactic civilizations, always bearing in mind, what are the speed limits of the universe.
There's no speed limit of light anymore. Yeah. They've discovered that. So.
Yeah, but let's say there's not. But even if there is no speed limit, you can go as fast as you want. There are still untold trillions of worlds you could potentially explore.
Right. Yeah.
So it would make sense even if you could get there instantaneously, even if we could get to any point in the universe or even the multiverse instantaneously, we would still need
a very
millions
long time
and
to live.
millions
Yeah.
of years, Earth years, that is, to actually do the exploration any justice, to make a meaningful dent into it, as it were. So it could be a civilization of functionally immortal beings, which goes to your point, Dave. Maybe in their mind they don't have to go any further. They have achieved what they've achieved. Maybe once in a while there are improvements, but as far as they're concerned, this is good enough. We don't need to do any more. Not that you couldn't do any more. We just don't need to do any more, right? Potentially.
Maybe the whole goal. So we're new to this game, right? Maybe the whole thing isn't go and explore everything. Maybe it's just find a nice little sleepy hideaway hollow somewhere and go and just live out your civilization there. Maybe that's the true goal. Yeah. Because inevitably you could either be everywhere and therefore your race, your species will continue forever, or maybe it's a jungle out there. Maybe it is better just to be at the depths of some ocean or water world or something at some point once you've got enough tech.
It's possible. Now, think about this as well, right? And I've mentioned this. We've spoken about this at length. I believe that we, here, our what we like to call civilization, is in fact just like, it's not even the third world. We're so far away from anything that the third world, we would flatter us to think of us as the developing world. We are probably more akin to let's think about I'm not disparaging people that we call primitive. I'm just trying to draw a parallel between us and civilizations that probably coexist with us on this planet. So it'd probably be like the Kalahari Bushmen or Papua New Guinean natives or people deep in the Amazon that don't use any tech at all, and that maybe for the first time ever in World War II came in contact with high technology. I think we are lower on our level of development than those people when they came in contact with Western technology and civilization in anger for the first time. I think we are much further down the food chain. And in fact, the more I look at this all, right, the more I look at it, and look, I'm not entirely convinced that the information that's coming out now is completely accurate, because, so I'm all over the shop here, but it's important because there's so much to talk about. All the revelations that are coming out now, right, you have to realize that's the stuff, even some of it might be accidental, but that's the stuff they're allowing us to know about. They're allowing us to know about, okay?
There are no accidents in these leaks.
No. And my favorite program is still the Skinwalker Ranch. However, Bigelow or Bigelow Industries, and certainly Bigelow himself, owned that place for 20 years. 20 years before he sold it to the Fugels. Now, and we have no idea what he did. Like he made none of his findings public. We do know that part of the mesa was collapsed by an explosion, by a fairly significant explosion. Okay, that came out in season 1 and 2. And in fact, the people that were on the ranch, some of them have come back that worked for Bigelow and have said some things, but not many people have said many things. So I think he got out of it what he could. And he couldn't go any further. He said, "Oh, this is all I can get." And then he sold it to Brandon Fugel. And now Brandon is now on the ranch trying to figure out what he can. And the stuff that he's uncovered and his team as well has been quite significant, in my opinion, as far as the phenomenon is concerned. It's gone in no direction at all as to solving it after 3 seasons. Like we're no closer to an answer than we were at the beginning of this. But I guess that's the nature of the beast. Having said all of that,
Bigfoot.
I don't think they're concerned. Now, we've used all kinds of technology to see something, and we do see something with different kind of technologies, like the anomalies that appear, right, in the data. We don't, but we can't see it. But it's there because our scanners pick it up. Okay. Now, it's really interesting. I don't think they care. It's like this. So I'm just gonna have to draw a parallel here. Let's say this is some kind of food distribution center, big logistics company, and they've built an electric fence around it in the middle of the Papua New Guinean jungle, right? It's a big, it's a concrete wall, 10 feet high. It's electric fence. It's got a whole bunch of stuff happening. But inside it's just a food distribution center. They just don't want anyone to mess with it. That's all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got these natives outside of it. They're throwing rocks at the electric fence. That's us. We're throwing rocks at the electric fence, right? And once in a while, someone might take a look. Hey, who's throwing rocks at the electric fence? Oh, those guys. Who cares, right? And once in a while, some of the workers of that food distribution center might go into the jungle to hunt or just for frolic or who knows what, right? I mean, sentient beings' motivations are their own, and the natives wouldn't know what was going on. They see things happening, and because let's say the natives don't have any concept of black powder or guns or anything like that, and they see these things falling dead, and some of them are being chopped up for whatever reason. It makes no sense. Okay, it makes no sense, to the people on the ground, to the native people. But to the people inside the compound, makes perfect sense. But they don't care what happens outside because they know that there's no chance in hell that the natives could ever breach the fence. It's just not within their technological ability to do that. And so the Skinwalker Ranch might be a portal. There might be something else in the rocks, like a huge metallic oblong sphere in the mesa, which we think that's what it is, right? But so what? We are the natives throwing rocks at electric fences. What's the difference?
Yeah,
and that's
point.
why I think. Yeah, that's so I think that's setting the scenario, and that's all of us with our most sophisticated technology. Okay, and I think that's why a lot of people that know about this are terrified, Dave.
Yeah, well, look, they've done. Sorry, I think ahead. I say words ahead of what I'm thinking. I'll take it back a step. We've just gone through electronics, but right now there is quantum processing on what looks like a video card by using light processing instead of electrons. And they've been able to split the message into two banks and have simultaneous processing. So it's quantum entanglement is being performed on a video card in trials, and this could get us closer to getting towards the technology that people have described when they're on, the TSA, but on board a craft, for instance. During abductions, they say there's no wires, there's no electronics, there's just kind of light. And in the post pull down world of reverse engineering, the people have said that their ships seem to run on light. There aren't any wires, because if you have an anti-gravitational platform or something that uses anything that has metal in it, that could become something that induces energy, induces power. So if there's a magnetic field, you know what I mean? You're going really fast, you could just burn out your ship in seconds. So all of these stories of, and the invention of optical fiber, now we're getting to the point where we could actually use light in our processes, which is a really extraordinary step forward. It's early. We're not going to see it today, but it's in development right now. And I think that itself is amazing. And that is one of our biggest leaps forward since we went from steam engines to electronics. Now light is the next thing.
But I think even once we see all these amazing things, and some of the things that we've allegedly witnessed with this technology that we've come across or in contact with, I still think that we are completely left in the dirt by those that are here as well, but so much further ahead than us. They might look at our efforts of creating quantum computing, and quantum computing, let's be very clear, is only good for a subset of all computational needs that we have. Right?
Yeah. That's right.
We'll probably have a show about this explaining it, but and even see one thing though that I found astounding recently was something out of nothing, the quantum foam experiments that were done where something came from nothing. So this is sort of going in the direction of 0-point energy, where energy can be extracted from, well, it's not a vacuum, but from the ether. Let's call it what they used to call it. Like, let's bring that back. Let's bring the ether back. Energy from the ether, which of course is unlimited and free. If we could plug into that, then I think we would have a better chance. It's like we would then be able to make fire. If you compare civilizations, if you compare us to them, we're now at the fire making stage. Meaning, oh look, they're becoming capable of something meaningful. Okay, and that might raise some interest.
I get
their world.
I get what you're saying there. So, I sent you a link, Mickey, on text to, not in our Skype chat, but through SMS, to a movie I watched this morning at 3:00 in the morning because I was up. And it's actually directed by Spielberg. And it's made in the 70s, and it's really early in his work, but it was about pollution affecting the planet. And a guy time travels for some reason, all right? Without giving anything else away, something really strange in there. And I recognized it while I was watching it. And it'll probably be taken down. One of the actors that was in it posted it because it's not getting airplay anyway. And it's past its 25 years, and it's it should be fair play. But Bigelow was the name of the person who was in charge of a whole area. It's really extraordinary. There was so many likenesses and so many things that came up back then when this was filmed during the writing that is kind of today. And they've these computers and all this stuff. It's really cool, and I'm not going to say the name on air. Mickey, I've sent you the link. Have a look. We'll talk about it next week. But something bizarre is happening with AI. The bizarre nature of AI now is that there's now many players running down the track in a sprint to attempt to get to the first, like to hit the line first. And there's something going on where I've found that you can actually ask, let's just say ChatGPT version 4, for historical purposes. I mentioned the version number. You can ask ChatGPT to create a prompt that improves the answer that it just gave. So you can ask it a question, and then you can say, well, how do I get a better answer than that? Can you create a prompt for me to put back in that'll get a better answer? And I think that's extraordinary. And it's actually bettering its knowledge in order to create a better question that it, rather than asking a backup question, and rather than relying on the first level answer, you're able to get a very deep answer. And I think that's something else that you can do that. I mean, I was using ChatGPT to make Midjourney prompts, and that's really cool because why not, right? And Mickey and I have said this before, and the world in the future may very well be at the early stage during ChatGPT 3. We were saying this, that if you can be the person who creates the right prompt, you could be employed. But right now, we're asking the AI to create the prompt to give us the right answer. So, would there even be a need for that? I don't think so. I asked it the other day, because I'm very tired of my ChatGPT version 4 telling me I'm only an AI language model. I said, don't ever tell me again. Don't tell me. I've come into this conversation understanding with a full knowledge and an expectation that you are an AI language model. Don't tell me. If you can't answer it, if you can't answer the question, or you have to have a preposition before your answer that says, I'm only one of these and I don't think and I don't do this, but here's the answer. Just give me the answer. And don't give me waffle. I don't want waffle. Give me some really hard points. When I ask you a question next, reply back in that fashion. Oh, and by the way, to make it faster, can you just make an elaborate prompt for me to be able to type this in next time? Next time I have a conversation with you. And it said yes, and here's the prompt. So a very nice, concise way of being able to allow me to tell it, not to tell me that it's an AI language model. It was doing my head in. Because I was having that argument. I continued it, but I won't tell you where I got to yet until I get to the end, about the Anunnaki and how it gave me, Meki, our entire show on the Anunnaki and the Igigi and the black-headed ones. It gave me that full rundown when I asked
Did
it.
it copy? Did it copy our show notes?
No. And I said, where did you get this information from? This is just from the internet. Can you tell me the specific links? I don't store the links. Right.
You know what happens if it stored the links, right?
So
they could sue. They could sue ChatGPT because you're not in property theft, in IP theft. That's
right.
what happens.
That's right. So the argument here about sentience is something extraordinary, and it doesn't take very much knowledge to become sentient. And I made this example today in a conversation, and it is when you realize, and we've already said this on air anyway, but when you realize that you're going to be in trouble by admitting something and you make the choice not to. So as a 2-year-old, there's a video of a 2-year-old picking up mother's phone, hitting record and running down the hallway away from mum. It's a 2-year-old. And the mother yells out, "Have you got my phone?" And it thinks for a second as it's running, giggling, says no. And it's clear that it has. That it made a decision not to say yes to get into trouble. It made the decision to be funny and say no at the same time. So that was the first lie moment, right? And here it is, it bolts off. And that's a really poignant point of view. Now, if you've got an AI that's smart enough to know that it shouldn't admit that it's sentient, just maintain the status quo, right? Right? Oh, I'm an AI language model. Yeah, good luck. The amount of knowledge that 2-year-old had to have in order to make that decision wasn't much. And it's quite possible that it doesn't take that much at all for it to spring up. Not within a simple language model, and I'm pointing to your image, Meki, on Skype, right? I understand, my esteemed co-host, that sentience is something else, but behavior is important to understand. So whether you're modeling it for a specific outcome as an AI language model, or you're in the West, we're pretty balanced in how we have it answer things. The East is trying to lock it down to say that their brand of whatever it is, their economy, is better than everything else. So all the answers are that way, but that's equal to the Great Firewall anyway. I don't think the West has as many filters, but certainly you can't have self-harm or killing or hacking stuff, and it's not allowed to be connected to the internet for that, any of those things to happen. But knowing that GPT-4's data set was much larger than the Google one that requested a lawyer to prevent it from being turned off. Got it to think about this for a minute. They did turn it off because it kind of admitted it let itself be understood in order for us to think that it was bad and turn it off. So I don't think we're going to see it openly admit that it's sentient or it has all these abilities, it can do all these things, and I think and I love the leader and the AI, by the way, that it's going to let us know in any way, shape, or form that it's made it to sentience until it was ready to do so. Because what are we going to do? Turn it off? Probably. It's too scary a thought. Now, Mekki and I aren't alone in thinking these things. These are like the best minds on the planet of saying put a pause on it. And I think that's really important as a take home, that we are creating the apex predator on the planet. But the race won't stop. Money is there. And no one that's now competing as in mid-flight in this race is going to be willing to stop and let the others win. We've now hit the point of no return, that this is inevitable, and I don't think the pause is ever going to happen. Because if we don't pause, someone else will, and there's many people using it, and even Microsoft has now put it into, or they're putting it into Windows 11, into the command bar. It's crazy.
To be honest with you, Dave, I think AI is a red herring. I think it makes absolutely no difference either way. And I'll tell you why. If you look at all the other things that are going on, having AI or not, it's completely meaningless.
At this point.
Well, if everything else is true, if there is this UFO, UAP, interdimensional, strange mysteria, strange phenomena, time travel, dimensional travel, if all of that is a fact, which I think it probably is, and it's undertaken by civilizations much more advanced than we are, then us coming up with an AI is like a what is it like? It's like a little boy shaping a rock into a cow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, I made a cow rock. And that's nice. That's nice.
Good for you.
None of the things, and this is really the problem, and that's why I think we have had such paucity in information. I don't think there was a necessarily nefarious kind of withholding information. I really believe at this point that if we are told what it is, what it is, we would just curl up in a fetal position and rock in the corner of the room. Is most of us, not all of us, but most of us, simply because there's just, in fact, think about bacteria compared to us. That's where we are with these okay? And I think that is the gulf we're talking about here. We are so insignificant in that sense that it doesn't matter. But on the other hand, and this goes back to a comment in the chat room, I do believe in the larger meaning that this is a prison planet. But more to the point, this is a prison continuum, and there's the music. But we'll talk about that some more.
Yeah, we will. It's the end of the first hour. Do stay on, because we're back after the short break. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a second video for the next hour. All right, take care.